What's good out there, Liquid Trucking? Welcome in to our New Year's Day special. It is a end of the year wrap-up episode. We've got a lot of people on vacation. We've got a lot of people out doing things, enjoying time with their family. I know we got a lot of drivers that are on home time as well. So we thought, let's find the best clips from the last half of the year and play them again for you guys so you can hear some of the awesome content we've produced for Liquid Trucking throughout the year. And this first clip here is a very special one to me because we didn't think we were going to get one of these drivers on. I had two of Liquid's very most senior drivers on the show for episode, I believe it was episode 38. It was called Senior Driver Appreciation. Now, we got these two guys in Polar Bear, who's joined the podcast a lot, and Dan Pijanowski, who was a little bit unsure at first, but decided to go ahead and take the leap with us and come on the podcast. And the reason we brought these two gentlemen in is because they have so much experience. They've seen every single situation that you can possibly imagine. And honestly, they are actually kind of out there raising their hand and saying, hey, we're here to help. So we put together this Senior Driver Appreciation episode to kind of show you guys, hey, this is pretty impressive. We should definitely give these guys a call when we're going through something that we don't quite understand, or maybe something's happened that's given us a little bit of thrown us for a loop, stumped us a little bit. You know, it's like trivia at the bar where it's like, it's right on the tip of my tongue, but I didn't watch Friends, so I'm not going to get it right. Look, I get it. It happens to me all the time. I've got mentors in my line of work that I will call and consult. In fact, I talk to a couple of them 3 times a week. So I get it. And I really wanted to showcase how much these senior drivers, Polar Bear and Dan Pijanowski, really do want to help the rest of the fleet at Liquid. It's a great conversation. I hope you enjoy it. Thanks for being here for our year-end wrap-up show.
Welcome to the gold standard of podcasts for the gold standard of drivers. This is the Liquid Trucking Podcast with your host, Marcus Bridges.
The people who I work with now, who you could call senior drivers, and the people who I mentioned earlier, the pioneers drivers, the Jimmy Cosgrove, the Dale Horseman, and all of them, those guys made the business. They established a foundation and the base for who we are today. Sure. And us senior drivers who picked up what they started, we were in the mud. We were in the blood. We sweated. We sacrificed. Has Polar Bear talked to you about spraying silage pits?
Not yet. Nope.
I can't wait.
Well, one of the things we used to do is to go to
just a
Westway, and we would load 23-ton, 24-ton of molasses, and then we would have to take it to, western Nebraska, eastern Colorado, North Dakota, South Dakota, and you'd go to a guy's ranch, and you would have to stick all your hoses that were on the trailer together, plus the fire hoses that they told you to throw on before you got. And you're familiar with fire hoses, right, Marcus?
Yes, sir.
So you stick those all together. So you got 150, 200 feet stretched out across someone's property, and you're spraying silage pits. Some of the silage pits you can hit with 150 feet of hose, a 3-foot chunk of 2-inch pipe that's been hammered flat on one end so it gives a fan effect when you start pumping.
Uh-huh.
Some of those you can hit. Others, like I've been to before, go down to Sublette, Kansas, where those feedlots down there are 35,000 head, 40,000 head. So they have multiple silage piles that are just on top of the ground, and they're 6-7 acres across.
Wow.
Just rotting, moldy silage, and you got to crawl up on top of these silage pits, dragging this hose that's full of product, spraying these pits. Every time you put your foot down, you're stirring up the mold spores and the dirt and everything. So when you get out of there, you're coughing, you're wheezing. I remember going down to Sublette, Kansas and spraying this exact pit I'm talking about with Mark Linhart. Him and I, both of us had a load and we helped each other. It was 103 that day.
Wow.
And we're dragging hoses on silage pits, spraying these silage pits with this molasses mixture that once it cools and dries, it turns into a great big Snickers bar.
Right.
And the object of that is to keep the moisture and the rain from letting the silage rot. So it kind of puts a crust on the top of it.
Uh-huh.
But after we got done that day, we were hot. We were sticky. We're both coughing and wheezing. I had a fever for 3 days after that because of all the mold and everything that you breathe in your lungs. And this is just some of the silage pits we sprayed. You know?
And one big thing you forgot, Dan, was hope the wind's in your favor.
Oh, yeah.
Not because how many times, you know, the wind's blowing from 3 out of 4 directions and you can't do anything else.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, when you're all done spraying, you gotta shuck off all your clothes. I remember going to a guy's farm spraying a silage pit, and I sucked off all my clothes by his machine shed and used his garden hose to wash off, just standing out there in my underwear. Yeah.
So
changing clothes.
So it was a little bit tougher back in the day, and I think, you know, just to kind of touch on what you said there, Dan, and who, you know, who the credit should go to. I think that's one of the reasons that we brought this episode up in the first place, is to give some credit where credit is due. And one thing that I think is very important here is that as time moves on, as it always does, never going to leave a single one of us behind, going to drag us all into the future. It's important to remember who crawled so that you could walk, and it's important to remember why you walked so that others could run. You guys are kind of building this business, and it's gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, and now it's to the point where it is today. I think it's important to say it wouldn't have happened without the contributions of everybody that started and that moved with it into the future, and that went from 4 trucks in a field to 30 trucks, and from 30 trucks in a junkyard up to 100 trucks in, a terminal. And
5 years.
Yeah, and
6
now
years.
to where you guys are. You know, it took the contributions of everyone, but those guys that were out there in the beginning, really, you know, trudging through silage pits and doing that type of work, you do deserve credit for why this company is as successful as it is today. And there was something else that you mentioned, Dan, that you mentioned it kind of in passing, but I think it's very important to touch on. The experience that you guys have, absolutely, it's the technical stuff, it's the driving, it's the safety, it's the hazmat, it's all the things, of the plumbing. But let's not forget about the customer service edge. You guys have spent 20 some odd years, 30 some odd years learning how to approach these customers. And, you know, you do have to be careful if you're going onto somebody's farm that they don't come meet you with the shotgun. That could be something that could get out of hand really quickly. And with some of the deliveries that you guys are making, it's important to have the knowledge about, hey, you this is a guy that you need to talk to before you go in there. Don't just pull in. These are all tips that you guys can share and are willing to share if somebody reaches out and asks for them.
Well, I think, and Polar Bear will vouch for this too, is I think the last couple of generations of truck drivers who have come to work for us, the thing that irritates us is these resources are here. We're here. But yet the last couple of generations of truck drivers think they know everything when they come here. They want to start out top pay. They want a brand new truck. And I don't want to do that. I want this gravy run. Whoa, wait a minute here. When I got hired, my bias put you through the test. You did 3 months or so of the dirtiest, crappiest work you could possibly think of just to test you.
Mm-hmm.
And he would test you. And once you got past that, once he knew that you were going to stay, then he'd give you a crappy job, and then he would give you a gravy train job, and then a crappy job, and then a gravy train job. The people who come to work for us today have no idea how easy they have it now. And they think because we have all this technology that they don't need to talk to someone. It irritates the hell out of me when you're in the same truck stop, the same customer, whether it be your shipper or your consignee, and you got someone who works at the same company who's 15, 20 feet away from you, and he's just sitting in his truck ignoring you. Won't wave, won't come over and talk to you or nothing. But, you know, that's today's generation where when you go out with your wife and kids, they're all sitting there on their phone texting each other instead of sitting at the dinner table talking to each other. The social skills, talking to your customers, is just gone.
And it's such an important part of the job, too, because you piss the wrong customer off, and all of a sudden you guys don't have that account anymore. That affects everybody. That's not just you. That's the whole company that felt that. So these things are important to remember. And I have to ask this question. You'll have to forgive me here because I've been doing a pretty good job keeping it serious. But when you talk about a gravy job, are you talking about like an easier job, or are you actually hauling gravy? Because I know, I mean, you've got tanks. Like, it wouldn't be that far-fetched for you to haul some nice country gravy across, would it?
So I'm going to give a really good example, and I don't know that Dan's ever done it, but remember the Rhode Islands, Dan? It was no touch on both ends, and it was a 1,500-mile run, you know, and some of them, they were out and back because we didn't have the load. So that's one of the best gravy runs I can think of. We just had to load it, and then you drove out there and they unloaded it. You get out and BS with them, or you could stay in your truck. But
I've heard it numerous times showing up at a customer who hasn't had a lot of experience dealing with OFC Schmidt liquid trucking. And they say, hey, you guys are all right. You get out of your truck, you actually talk to people. Most guys, when they come here and deliver, they just sit in their truck and they don't even talk to you. So social skills, getting out and talking to people, is a big thing, because when that consignee, that shipper is thinking about using you the next time, he's not thinking about the freight rate. He's not thinking about this or that. He's thinking about the last person he saw from OFC Schmidt Liquid Trucking. So when you get out of your truck, you need to be squared away, clean shaven, smelling good, got your uniform on, your pants and all that. You don't hop out looking like some frickin' bum.
Sure.
Because that is who he associates with that trucking company. He's not thinking about the email that he's getting from someone in the office. He's thinking about the last truck driver that got out.
Yep.
He doesn't want to think about the truck driver that sat there and told dirty jokes the entire time he was there.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know,
sure.
Talking his ear off.
No, it's a good point. And hey, we've got an episode back on our annals called The Gold Standard of Drivers, which I think is kind of what you're talking about. Liquid demands the gold standard of driver. You guys have to be more on your game because of what you're hauling than the standard, insert truck driver here. And that extends beyond the knowledge of the driving and the plumbing and all that, and extends to the customer service and being friendly. And listen, I've talked to enough drivers here to know there's a lot of really good people working at this company, top to bottom, that are just good people that you would want to sit down and have a beer with or a coffee with, or people that, if your family was enjoying a nice picnic at the park and they stopped by to say hi, you'd be happy that they were there. So use that to your advantage. It would be my only advice, in that, even if you've got a customer that's had a terrible day and you can tell, if you get out and you just think, I'm going to kill this guy with kindness, his day has been shitty, I'm going to make it good for these next 15 minutes, whether he likes it or not, he'll remember that. That type of stuff sticks with people, whether you think it does or not.
Oh, I miss the farm drops and the ranch drops, because these are just good, soulful people. They just want to talk to you. It's not like where I'm at today in Chicago, where everybody in Chicago's got an attitude.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of truck drivers don't want to come here, because you hop out, you're happy-go-lucky, and the first thing happens, they bite your head off. Everybody in Chicago's got an attitude. It's just the Chicago thing. But delivering out on the farm, you got to talk to real people who appreciated you. Hell, there was one time where I delivered a load of molasses to a guy in Elm Springs, South Dakota. Now, I had forgotten when I talked to him the night before that he's on Mountain Time versus Central Time. So I actually showed up an hour earlier. And the guy hit the front porch, putting his coveralls on, his boots on. Sun's coming up, and I'm thinking, crap, I forgot about the whole time zone change thing. And he was okay with it. We just had to move a few things around so it would fit. But afterwards, he goes, hey, do you want to come in and have a cup of coffee? Sure. And that's the kind of thing you get from delivering on the farm and the ranches that I miss about the work we do today. But that guy went in there, poured me a cup of coffee. His wife was cooking scrambled eggs, breakfast pork chops, bacon, sausage, hash browns, the whole meal, everything. And I'm looking around in this house, and it's filled full of rodeo buckles, awards, 30-30 rifles hanging up. And he begins to tell me that that's his stepsons, and that him and his wife were rodeo stars themselves, and his stepson was Jesse Bales. Now, if you know anything about rodeo, Jesse Bales was a big-time rodeo circuit rider, and now he does a lot of announcing.
Yeah.
But I never knew the guy. I acted like I knew the guy, because he's telling me about all this stuff. Oh, yeah, but I had to go home and turn the TV on and find out who this Jesse Bales guy was. And then going to the local rodeos, you can hear stuff like that. But just good, wholesome people talking to you. And they appreciate a truck driver getting out and talking to them.
Yeah.
I really miss that.
Well, I guess maybe the best way that we could relive those days would be to have a little bit of that camaraderie get built up between the senior drivers and the new drivers. I mean, that's what we're here for. We've got you guys on. We've got two guys here with wealth of knowledge that are more than happy to share it. And as you've heard here, they've got some great stories to tell. And guys, this has been a fantastic conversation. All right, Liquid, our next clip here was a conversation that I thoroughly enjoyed. Part of podcasting for me is not only just getting to talk to all these very cool people that have very cool jobs about what they do, but I really like the essence of podcasting. If you want to get real vocabulary laden here, I like a conversation that is unfettered in that, yeah, we might have a time limit. We might need to, keep this thing under 24 hours, but I like the fact that a conversation can go anywhere. And we had a conversation with Tim Hines, who's the co-founder of Stay Metrics and project manager for 10th Street. Tim has just a bevy of experience across the trucking industry, and he'll talk about it in this interview. But he also has some very interesting thoughts on things like culture, things like, work-life balance, things like mental health. And we kind of just got an open book interview from Tim Hines here, and trust me, it's one you're definitely going to want to listen to. So please enjoy, Liquid, a recap of our interview with Tim Hines, co-founder of Stay Metrics and project manager for 10th Street.
And I remember a night shift. I had one particular run that they locked me on for a while, where I would go to a plant in Argus, Indiana. Argus, Indiana is an hour and 20 minutes from South Bend. And I'd pick up every night at about 10:30, 11 o'clock. And I would pick up and go to Detroit. Well, when I pick up, you're going to this plant, and, my personality, I didn't know anybody, but I'd be walking around the plant talking to people, hey, because it's not traditional shipping hours, right? You're coming in and hey, I need one skid. So you got to find the right person. But I get to talking to people, and I saw how many housewives were there. And they reminded me of my wife in our neighborhood, right? They're soccer moms, t-ball moms, they're about our age, back then. And I said, and it was like 90% women on that shift. And I just asked, well, why? It seems like all women. Yeah, because the guys work the first shift. My husband's home working the first shift. Okay. So,
interesting.
Wow, holy cow. Well, then you get the news that plant got consolidated with a plant in Wisconsin, so they're going to close it now. And in my mind, empathetically, I'm like, whoa, this is tough, man. How are these people going to find work? And that really, quite honestly, guys, is one of the core problems we're having right now in our country, is we've lost a lot of our good-paying rural manufacturing jobs, and I don't think we've replaced them. So that's where I'm at so far. What kind of questions do you have so far?
Well, and I'll Jason, I'll clear the way for you here in just a second too to ask Tim anything based on what we've already heard. But I think that's a very important piece of this conversation I saw that going all the way back to the Clinton administration back in the early 90s. My dad was in the timber industry in rural Oregon, and as the timber industry kind of started to go the way of the buffalo, a ton of rural jobs, blue-collar jobs, mill-working jobs, where you look at a city that's got, or a town, I should say, that has 1,800 people living in it, 300 of those people are working at the mill. And you don't really stop to extrapolate and zoom out and think, man, that's a significant chunk of the population that not there's another mill across town. No, there's no mills for an hour and a half in any direction. And these people are completely out of work, and it's skilled labor that they've done for a very long time.
Yes.
So I really see that, and I think that you're right. Do you see any path to replacing these jobs in rural America that we've lost?
Well, no. And not only know what the bad news is. So the question you asked was the most obvious question that I've had. And about 10 years ago, I was in a peer group. What is that? It's like a group of executives, all business owners that meet once a month, and you discuss your business problems and strategies. So I was in one of these peer groups. It was super effective. 80% of the people in there were manufacturers. And so I brought this question to them. I said, hey, when will manufacturing come back? In your guys' opinion, when will it come back? Because in my mind, these guys are the experts. I've been listening to them for 2 or 3 years on manufacturing. And across the board, they said it won't. We've lost too much intellectual capital. We've lost too much, I'm a wood carver, and as you learn that skill that you're talking about, that these guys learn, you just don't stop that and pick that up 20 years later with new technology. No, that it doesn't work that way. So they were down on the fact that it would be easy for us to pick up on manufacturing and bring it back in big force. So I don't know, and I think that's still a head scratcher, and I think it's going to be a head scratcher for us as a country until we can figure it out, because I think that's where the point pain is. I think there's a lot of anger in it, rightfully so, by the way. There's a lot of anger in those communities from being left behind, and I think we have got to help them.
Yeah, I do too. I agree. Jason, anything that's bubbling up in your mind here as we've kind of got through the first leg of Tim's story starting out here? Any questions you've got for him?
No questions, but Tim and I are good friends and have talked a lot over the years. Super dynamic guy. Very appreciative of him coming on. I think everyone's going to listen and love the rest of the story, as I am too. He hit the nail on the head. Everybody listening right now grew up somewhere, big town, little town, and you could probably all think about, for me, it was a Goodyear plant, Textron, Ace Hardware, a large printing factory. I grew up in, Little Lincoln, Nebraska, and those are the 4 that I can remember. Leaving Lincoln, hundreds of jobs each, family members working at each one of them at some point. And the jobs went away to, south of the border or somewhere overseas. And so anybody listening today, whether you grew up in Kansas, Missouri, North Dakota, they all have like stories. So, hit the nail on the head.
Well, and there's a point you brought up. I want to try to get my rewind button, see if I can find it in there, because you brought up a piece of gold in there that this directly links to the problem we have right now of poor employee loyalty. And so the idea of, man, why aren't people loyal? Oh, come on, man, why aren't they loyal like we used to be? And that is really spilt milk, in my opinion, because what I did in my mind, and you guys lived it, right? You guys, I think you're younger than I am a little bit. But when this happened, I thought, what the hell are the conversations around the dinner table like? And hey, you're not doing band this year because we can't afford the instrument. Hey, we're not taking that vacation because the plant closed. And we wonder why that generation that sat at that dinner table doesn't have loyalty to their employers. We weren't showing loyalty. So I don't know if that resonates with either one of you, but that kind of jumped out at me as being very honest.
It really does. And for me, my personal experience was I watched my dad and my mom both work jobs for other people and then go into business for themselves. And starting out in my professional career, I was what you would call endlessly loyal. In fact, I used to have a line I would say in job interviews is that loyalty is probably my best and my worst quality. Because for you as an employer, you're going to look at my loyalty and think it's above and beyond. For me as an employee, that is actually probably going to set me at a disadvantage from time to time because I'm willing to trust you. And at the end of the day, you as an employer are looking out for your bottom line, not for me as the employee. And that was a very important lesson for me to learn that, hey, your employer's going to love that loyalty, but take it easy because they will also tear the carpet out from under you. And that's happened to me as a professional.
Absolutely. And that's where, we're going to get on culture here in a little bit, but that's where it's so important for drivers to know who they're getting in the truck with. And there's no company perfect. We've got a lot of great carriers we've served through the years, but I think most drivers would agree you can smell and taste the culture in a good organization. It's a differentiator that it's there. And those are the types that I think you can trust. I got to leave it right there because you don't know, right?
Right.
But so that was a pivotal part. So at that point I was a driver. So I was a driver and if we were to hit the rewind button to what do you do in high school, other than I drank a lot of beer and I was like a C&D student, ADHD, the back of the class guys. I was one of the back of the class guys. But here's another thing I want to point out. I didn't have options. And there were millions like me that didn't have options. Okay? And this is important for the young generation to hear. Because, why didn't you just, where are my options? Well, they weren't college. We were told in that part of our raising humans that there's a group that were made for college and there was a group that weren't made for college. And I was in the, you're not made for college. So, all right. So what are my options? Well, how about the union trades? Oh, no. Not in the 70s and 80s. You had to absolutely know somebody to get in that. Well, then what about military? For sure. Military, very common. That was the path of least resistance for a lot of folks. And then it was just slug it out in the manufacturing facilities in Argus, Indiana, and pray to God that they never close the plant because your skills aren't transferable. That's where we're at, friends. That's what we're in. Chill.
So move with me into the next stage of your career in trucking, because we're at where you were driving essentially, and I know that you've had experience beyond that. So where did you go after the driving leg ended?
Okay, so now I'm trying to, guys. Now at this point in my career, I am trying to work deals. Okay, and I'm a deal worker. I've been a deal worker since I was a little kid. It's the ADHD in me, but I can work a deal. So now I've got the runs I want. I've got 60 hours. And I start to see that they're needing help in dispatch. So I'm like, hey, you guys need any help in there? I mean, I could come in there and, help out, And they weren't too interested in that, even though I kept offering. And then I said, what about Saturdays? What if I drove on Monday through Friday and I dispatched on Saturdays and Sundays? I'll take the whole weekend dispatch. Nobody wants that. Which, by the way, that's a hell of a strategy for somebody coming up for a career, is you take the work nobody else wants. So I'm going to take the work nobody else wants. I'll take it. So I got it, and that was basically that was my entry into the office, and I was horrible at it, guys. I was just absolutely horrible. Remember, I moved in from another state. I moved in from another state, and you want me to do local dispatch? Like, let's see, South Bend is split up in 4, Elkhart split up in 2. I don't even know, So I had successfully alienated probably 85. Let's see, we had how many drivers? We had 33 drivers. I bet you I alienated 25.
I'll least you're honest about it. I think that's a great part to the story.
Oh, God, yeah. Well, you learn. We grow, right? So, I mean, I'm able to do this stuff because we grow past it, right? And you learn from it. But really, I was bad at it, and there was a certain process in dispatch that required you to match paperwork, and it's an OCD thing, not an ADHD thing. And I just totally failed at it. I was always being told I wasn't doing it right, and so that kept me on Saturdays and Sundays because that work didn't happen. But they still had me drive during the week, which the drivers were pretty happy with. They liked me being in the driver's room with them rather than dispatch.
Yeah. So like, as long as he's not on the other end of the phone, we really like this Tim
yeah,
guy.
Man, yeah. So this is where it got good. I got smart with the owner of the company. He was smart, very similar to Liquid. There's some strategy in there. And what the owner said to me is, hey, dude, why don't you cover everybody's vacation for us for the next 2 years and come back into dispatch? And I said, well, okay, I'll try that. So I did. I not only did it for a year, but this is what this did for me. These route drivers become friends. So I was a route driver. I basically became a route driver. And some routes I stayed on for 3 months, right? But you become friends and you become integrated with not only that business, but that community. Because see, when I leave daylight screen and I pull over to New York Blower, oh, Bobby's still in front of me. He was in front of me, New York Blower. So I mean, it's this cool little family network, right? And really, what does that mean to people? Is drivers control freight. If we had a good driver on a route, we got more business on that route based upon a driver being able to be personable. So put that, park that in there, guys. And for those of you that are drivers out there, don't dismiss the fact that you're being kind and courteous to that shipper and that consignee doesn't help the organization as a whole. It absolutely does, especially if your competition is a little bit rough around the edges and you guys can show a little bit more class. It's going to set you apart. So now I'm in dispatch. I go back in dispatch and I'm good. Okay. Now I'm like, hey, go to daylight screen, tell Charlie I said hi, and don't use door 3. That damn thing's always broke. Right?
You had all the answers, just like any good dispatcher. You knew exactly what to say.
Exactly. And then how to make them more money. That was another thing that for those of you that are in dispatch, it's a two-way coin. If you want to choose how well you're doing, and just not check the box and take a paycheck, really take personally these guys and your ability to help them pick good runs, help them get good, double up when they can, or whatever you call it in your market, and capitalize off of revenue opportunities. So I did that in dispatch, and then I thought I was all that in a bag of chips, so I was going to become a customer service manager. So I became a customer service manager, and I had like all these ideas. So Jason, you have ideas from time to time, maybe. And all these
always,
absolutely. And I came in to the boss about 4 months later, and I had an idea, and he said, "Hey, here's the deal, dude. Not only am I not interested in what you're gonna say, but your job in jeopardy, and I'm not interested. You owe me like 8 projects." Well, I was woefully unaware. But that was basically, and I was not diagnosed with ADHD at that point. I had no idea, that it was kind of just the way my brain ran, And this guy was so smart. One of the smartest things he ever did for me is he said, "Hey, I interviewed a guy that just came out of Purdue named Kurt Ladow, and he might want to be your night shift supervisor. I think you might want to interview him." Well, I interviewed him. We liked each other. He's totally the opposite personality of me, and we've been business partners for the last 28 years.
The perfect yin for your yang, huh?
It is. It seriously is. So now when I start talking about my successes, there are successes, because really, quite honestly, I couldn't, I'll tell a story later. There was only one entrepreneurial thing I ever did without him, and I didn't do well. The other ones, everything I did with him, we tore it up. The other one I tried without him, So so now I'm in customer service. I'm doing pretty good, and they come to me and they say, "Hey, you're kind of rough around the edges." I'm like, "I am what I am, man. You know, I am what I am." And they're like, "Yeah, you know, but we think that you might be able to do sales." "Well, I can be where you want me to be."
I got a little bit of that chameleon in you, huh?
I came in like 32 seconds because my dad was in sales, and I knew that sales and ownership were the way to good revenue, to good money.
Uh-huh.
You know, and I'm fairly good at my. So I'm like, I think I could do this. Are we okay? So they gave me the sales job under two conditions. One is I go to the barber that they want me to go to. And two is I go to the mall and get at least a $200 suit and report back next week. So
yeah, they don't tell you in sales that a lot of that revenue gets sunk into just the way you look and the way you smell and all that good stuff.
Well, you know, it really didn't for me, and I'll tell you about that because I thought it did. But okay, so I started out in sales, and now this is my shot, you guys. Are you kidding me? I'm a truck driver, and now hey, dude, they paid for my lunches. I was able to take people to lunches. Are you kidding me? I mean, do you know how lucky I felt? And the car I drove was a company car. My God, I had won the lottery. I'm not going to blow this. So I started making my first sales calls at 6:30 in the morning because some people were on, you know, some traffic managers got in super early and left at 2:00. Mm-hmm. And I just do that. I'd be in there with donuts. Now, donuts weren't my thing, but there were a lot of the other guys' things. But I'd be in there and they'd be like, "Man, you know, nobody else comes in that early." And I'd be like, I didn't even see it as an advantage at the time. Like, oh, well, you know, I'm up and, you know, and I'm here. Well, I got the business. And then really, quite honestly, I became the number one sales rep in the company. And the guy that I beat when I first got into sales, he affectionately nicknamed me Jethro. So, but so Jethro done all right though. Jethro done all right. So it took me 2 years to beat him, but Jethro beat him, and then I was the number one rep after that. So in the meantime, there was a freight forwarder that was a customer of ours, and the owner of the company I was with was getting ready to sell, and he was giving me all his big corporate accounts. Okay, so I got all those big corporate accounts, and one of them was a freight forwarder. Now, it was ADHD. I'm going to hit the pause button there. It was ADHD. A lot of times people learn differently with it because you don't learn traditionally. You got to pick up little things here. That guy said that, and then that person said that. And if that goes like that, well, then wouldn't that be like that? I mean, that's exactly the way my brain works. So he goes, so these guys are like, hey, man, these guys are making tons of money. I remember, by now I got my truck paid off. We're starting to make a little money. We're going to take the kids on a vacation. Things are going really well for us. We're going to put a little addition on the house. And I had thought, well, if at that point I was doing well, but I knew the company was sold. To your point, Marcus, remember what all the movie I'd seen already? I saw the movie. I saw the movie, and somehow I knew that I needed to go find a safer place. So I started to look, and part of the things I'm looking at, there's no freight forwarder in South Bend, Indiana. All these people are selling this local community from Chicago and Detroit, which they hate, right? So all I got to be is the local Tim that I am, you know, and say, hey, man, I got super smart people back here if you got any air freight to get moved, you know. So we did. So we opened up an office for Jim Crane for Eagle USA, and we set a goal, said we wanted to be the top station in the country. And people said, well, what are you crazy, dude? Not a country, in the world. And I said, what are you crazy? We got London, we got Toronto's killing it right now. Detroit's doing great. LA's doing great. You guys are South Bend, Indiana? Well, we won in the third year. Third year we won. And we didn't win off of his huge revenue, but what we won off of was culture. And we created a culture where nobody left. Everybody was just diving into it. We'd have to tell people to leave at the end of the day. Like,
go enjoy your life.
Go enjoy your life, because people were just so into it, and we were tearing it up. It was doing great. But the most important thing that we did was we developed people. And that was one of the most, as I look back in my 60s now, I am, as I look back, that's one of the most rewarding things that I can say that I did in either intentionally or unintentionally all my life was help people. That was really beneficial to me to be able to now look at people that are the top performing salespeople in whatever market, and this person's doing that, and to know they kind of came up through that culture. Mm-hmm. So I did that. The company I was with asked me, would you kindly consider coming back? The one I'd left. And I'll just tell the story. This is because I have no names here, but I heard these athletes would get these sign-on bonuses things, you know?
Oh, yeah.
So 33 years old, no college education, Jethro all day long, right? I'm like, yeah, but I think it would take a sign-on bonus of, I don't know if I can put the number out there, 100,000. My wife really didn't want me to go back to him anyway.
So put a steep price tag on it just in case, right?
They said, wonderful. Can you start in 3 weeks?
Wow.
Well, yeah, sure. Yeah. I gotta tell Kurt, right? Hey man, I just made a decision and I didn't tell you about because it's my life, not yours. But I'm going back, and I'll go back too. Do you think it's changed the culture? I'm not going to pick on people. The culture's changed because we both were leaving the culture, and I was drinking the juice. I just got a nice check too, right? You know. And I said, "Yeah, I think it's changed." So he said, "Okay, here's my contract. Hand it in for me." So I'm walking out to the car because I'm going to go to back to the old employer, and I have his contracts in my hand. I'm like, this isn't my business. And I opened his car door and I put it on his seat. Well, the company he was with, that we were both with, did a great job, and they said, dude, stay here. They need you. We need you. We're going to take good care of you. Let Heinz go ahead and do his thing. So that was the one venture that I did without the support. And quite honestly, I left a year later. The culture didn't change. Learned a lot of lessons about people. Learned a lot of lessons about people with a lot of money. When money is, if the three of us get together and we do something, never mind those guys. I saw some of that stuff. And this is not to disparage any model, but just to point out that people look at that and they see that stuff. And so your culture should be clean. They should be fair. And you should be talking about fairness and equity throughout the entire organization. So as at this point now, I'm in freight forwarding, and I did that for 10 years. We were kind of top. And let me stop there and see what you guys want to inject or ingest or anything like that.
For sure. One thing, we talk about culture a lot on this podcast, and you and I were talking before we started recording here, Tim, about my thoughts on Liquid Trucking's culture from being a bit of a fly on the wall. I get to talk to the office staff. I get to talk to the drivers, and I see a fantastic culture. Drivers are always happy. And you touched on something about how good you felt when you saw somebody come up and grow through the organization. And it made me think about an episode that we did here just a few weeks back where I had on some of the most senior drivers at Liquid, and the entire point of the episode was kind of these two older guys that have been working with the company for so long and had all this success, and they're saying, we want the younger generation of drivers to call us. We want to distill this information, all this knowledge that we have, and they're not getting that as much. They don't see as many people reaching out, and we're kind of trying to stoke that fire a little bit and saying, listen, there's a sense of pride that's going to come from these drivers that get to help somebody that's having trouble, and they actually move their day forward and make it easier on them. And I think that that's part of a winning culture, is having senior members of your team that are willing to jump in and help bring up these younger members of your team. And Jason, I wonder if you had any thoughts on that, because I just, like I said, the connection between what Tim's talking about here and an episode that we did recently with your senior drivers, I was just singing in my head. So I'm wondering what you're thinking as we talk about this.
I'm echoing your thoughts and Tim's. A lot of Tim's stories not too different than mine. Driving a pedal route, delivering groceries. As a young driver or a young person starting out in any career, we only have so many folks we can learn from, right? The folks you work with, your parents. You learn the hard way on the job. So if you have anybody that wants to show you, and you can learn from them, you just got to soak that in while you can.
And I would tell you too, the old timers oftentimes want to do that. So you're being, you're not bothering them as much as you think you are. If anything, you're giving them an opportunity to do something that might make them feel fulfilled. And I think that's cool.
Man, I love listening back to that conversation with Tim Hines. What a cool guy. Has some really well put together thoughts on a lot of different aspects of the trucking industry, and we will definitely look to get him back on the show sometime in the future. Next up, though, I've got a couple more liquid drivers here that have a very interesting take on the way they approach their trips. These two guys, their names are Matt McKellar and Matthew. Let me see here. Where's that? Matthew Langford. Didn't want to get that name wrong. Sorry about that, Matthew. And Matthew was actually kind enough to go by Matthew during this interview because we had two drivers that go by Matt. We didn't want to confuse you guys. Matt McKellar, Matthew Langford. And what are we talking about here? Well, both of these gentlemen love to go exploring for a great place to take their 34. And not necessarily just a great place to park. Both of these gentlemen like to get out of the truck. They like to go exploring. And they have some fantastic places that they're going to suggest for you to take your 34 if you're in the neck of the woods and you haven't ever been there before. Or maybe you have been there before. You just didn't realize the great things that lie just outside of the parking spot. And these two gentlemen are awesome. Now, this is also one of our driver-suggested episodes, and Matthew Langford ended up with 50,000 Drive for Gold points for suggesting this episode to us. And just watch your text messages, drivers, because we will definitely be sending out more messages to get more suggestions from you because we absolutely love them. I had so much fun talking to Matt and Matthew about all the places that they go because I haven't been to any of these places. I might have been through the state. I might have driven by it, but I haven't got to go out and actually put my feet in the dirt and experience it like Matt and Matthew have. So I really enjoyed this segment. Lots of fun. Two really cool guys that we just had a really laid-back conversation about places they like to be. So please enjoy a clip from our episode, which was episode number 47, Favorite Places to Take Your 34. Joining me for this episode, I've got one of the gentlemen who we selected his topic right off the top. His name is Matt Langford. Matt, thank you for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Of course. Now, one thing I got to check real quick. Have you already received your driver gold points?
Yes, I did.
Perfect.
Yes, I did. Thank you for that.
Hey,
great.
Don't thank me, man. Thank you for bringing us this awesome topic because last week we did an episode about winter driving preparedness, and we had Damon come on and ask a bunch of questions and try to get his mind and his truck right for the impending winter. But it was a very serious conversation. There was a lot of things that we had to get to in that. And this one is not going to be quite as serious. This is one where we get to have a little bit of fun. I want to welcome on our second driver here, and I brought him on for a very specific purpose. You've met him before. His name is Matt McKellar. Matt, thanks for being back with us.
Hey, thanks for having me, Marcus.
Now, Matt and Matt, this is our first order of business here. I've got two guys on the phone that both go by Matt, and I'm wondering, is it a Matt 1 and Matt 2? Is one of you more comfortable with Matthew? Should I use last names or maybe CB handles? What do you guys think? Matt Langford, I'll start with you. Any ideas?
You can call me anything as long as it's not a four-letter word. Well, I guess you can call me Matt as a four-letter word. I can go by Matthew for to minimize confusion.
Okay, very cool. What about you, Matt McKellar? Do you have any ideas, or should we just go with Matthew and Matt?
Only my mother calls me Matthew, so calling me Matthew would be confusing. I would suddenly think I'm in trouble with my mother. So we could do Matthew and Matt, or Matt 1 and Matt 2. Langford can be number 1 since it was his idea. However, whatever works.
Okay, well, Matthew, since you were kind enough to agree to go by Matthew, I will address you as Matthew, Mr. Langford, and I'll address Mr. McKellar as Matt. Appreciate it, guys. Thanks for ironing that out with me. And it's funny, Matt, that you say that because there is one person in the world that gets away with calling me Mark, aside from blood-related family members. And it's one of my oldest friends in the world. And even to this day, at 40 years old, when she calls me Mark, it sends chills up my spine because I feel like I'm in trouble, just like you do, man. So I get that for sure. All right,
yeah,
fellas.
Something just resonates deep within when you hear that.
Yeah, it's very instinctual, almost like he was with me since birth. I don't know, but maybe I shouldn't have screwed up as much as a kid, and I wouldn't have gotten yelled at with that name as much. But hindsight's always 20/20. Let's not bark up that tree right now. Matthew, why don't you walk us through the suggestion that you gave us? Because after all this, we've been sitting here talking for almost 4 minutes. We haven't even gotten to the subject of why you're here yet. So what did you send me back the other day? What was the topic?
It was, I wanted to hear some other drivers where their favorite places to take their restart on the road is at. I've got several that I have in mind, but I'm pretty relaxed and simple. So it's not like, it's nothing exciting. Like I like to do it outside New York City or outside LA. Mine are pretty lame, but I like them.
Well, that's totally cool. And that's the reason that we decided this would be such a good episode, is because it doesn't matter what you suggest or what Matt suggests or anybody else. The likelihood is it's going to be a little bit different from what other drivers have done on their 34. So what types of things do you like to get into out there, Matthew? You said outside New York, outside LA. Are those places that you've gone and spent some time, or?
I have, but I didn't really enjoy it. I mean, my biggest thing, I like to find someplace, as far as off the highway as I can, someplace quiet. I also like, I do a lot of walking, so most of these that are my favorites have, a trail beside them, or there's a park down the road, maybe it's by a river or a lake. Just some place where I can get out and go for a long walk in the mornings and just you hear the highway, 55 hours a week. I just want peace and quiet when I'm on my restart.
I hear you. Well, great question first off, because it's a question that every driver out there can answer. There's one thing that all the drivers are doing aside from driving, and that's resetting every now and then. And so I love that it's something that can, if you're listening to this right now and you're thinking, dang, I really wish I would have been on that episode, send us an email, podcast@liquidtrucking.com, or, get over to the website there, navigate over there, podcast@liquidtrucking.com or podcast.liquidtrucking.com, and send us a message on what you do for your 34. We can definitely air some of those responses that we get. But Matt, I brought you on here because I'm very familiar with how you spend your 34s. You and I have had a lot of conversations about it. And, it's even better now. I didn't know that Matthew was looking for a place where he could take a nice, quiet nature hike. But, Matt, that's like your whole deal, right? You're finding spots like this all over the country.
Yeah, I agree with Matthew on that a little nature is just good for you mentally and physically, and a good change of pace from driving. And so I definitely do that when I can. I also do take advantage of cities, and we can talk about that a little bit, but definitely some of the places I've found with some nature access are pretty cool. So I'd be interested in Matthew's pointers as well.
Yeah, well, let's talk about a few of them. What are some of your favorite spots, Matt, to get out and, find yourself a little nature hike that you can take when you're on your reset?
Let's see. There's a Love's in Holland, Michigan. It's outside of Ann Arbor. And there's a park down the road it's not crowded. There's nobody there. It goes around, there's a trail that goes around the lake. And it's probably about a mile long. But it's a a newer Love's. It's off a little ways off the highway, so it's quieter. And then getting out in the trail and just, I probably need to start bringing my fishing pole because I do a lot of walks by the water, but and then I got to try to figure out how to get a driver or a fishing license for every different state I go to. But,
yeah, they ought to do something like that for you drivers. That's like a resident license where you just get to fish wherever you want to.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd take advantage of that.
Yeah, I bet a lot of people would.
Yeah, but my favorite place that, as far as hiking or walk. I don't really hike. I walk a lot, but I in the Parachute, Colorado. There's a new Love's there right off I-70 in between Denver and Grand Junction, and they have a. If you go through walk through the town, you can end up on the south side of town, and the sidewalk follows this golf course up to the base of the mountains there, and it's so quiet. Obviously you're right in the middle of the Rockies, so you're up in the high elevation. The night skies is just amazing, and the scenery is just that's what it's all about for me.
Oh, I bet, man. Those mountains out there in Colorado are something else, man. And you're talking to a guy that lives a stone's throw from the Cascade Range here in Oregon, and I got to tell you, the Colorado mountain ranges are a thing of beauty, man. And look, you're speaking my language too. Walking right next to a golf course. If there's any place that I want to be when I'm not golfing, it's watching other people golf. So that would be perfect. That sounds like a great couple of spots that you found. Are there any more that you like particularly?
Well, most of mine are like out west in the mountains or the desert. But my favorite one that I found, and this is why I brought it as a topic, is because I found this one. It wasn't in my GPS. I found it in a truck stop app, and so because it's off the highway, it's on like the loop. It's on I-90 in Livingston, Montana. It's called the Yellowstone Truck Stop. So there's always parking there. It's just a mom and pop place. They've got, you're several miles, 3 miles from the highway, so there's no noise. You have the beautiful mountain views. There's also a place called Rosa's, maybe, or Rosa's, something like Rosa's Pizza. Oh, that place is amazing. I try to, I pretty much, whenever I leave for a couple of weeks, I package up all my food at home and just put it in the freezer. So, but on my restart, that's the day that I let myself, get pizza or go out to eat or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always like to try the local pizza places all over the country. And that one that it's called, I wish I could remember. I think it's called Rosa's Pizza. And but that is probably, I don't know if it was the altitude messing with me, my taste buds or what, but that was the best pizza I've ever had.
Well, it sounds like just a combination of all the good things. You're off the highway, so you've got no noise. There's plenty of parking. You're at a mom and pop stop, and you've got good pizza. You might as well just set up a tent and live there, Matthew. It sounds great.
But I was watching a documentary the other day, and I did learn that another famous person decided the same thing, to move to Livingston, but the Unabomber, that's where he lived at.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah, I know. I heard that on the documentary, and it kind of like shook me. I'm like, wait, what? Huh?
Dude, and then you have that thought too, like, I wonder if he liked Rosa's Pizza. Like,
yeah.
Well, that's awesome. That sounds like you found some pretty good spots there. And Matt McKellar, I'm assuming maybe you were taking some notes there, because I know that you're a nature walk guy. You're a hiker. You like to get out and see some scenery. And you've shown me some pretty cool pictures that you found in your adventures. But have you ever been to any of those places that Matthew was describing?
I have not been to them, but I was taking note of them. And I grew up in Michigan, so I was paying attention to the Michigan one, and I love Montana, so that one as well. So definitely some good ideas there.
Perfect. Well, what are some of your favorites, Matt, that you've come across in your travels?
Well, I guess I'll mention two. One of them, there's a Love's in Low Moor, Virginia, Moor, M-O-O-R. And it's if you go about a half a mile down the road from the truck stop, there's a little side road, and it cuts down by the river, and there's a park by the river, and there's not much hiking to do once you get there. So you got about, a little walk to get there and get back, but that's kind of it. But that is just this most beautiful river kind of rushing out of the mountains. And it's loud, so you don't really hear the traffic noise or anything like that. It's usually very quiet down there. So just a really nice spot to sit and ponder or fish, if you can figure that out, Matthew. But probably the best place that I've found so far is east of Gallup, New Mexico on I-40. There's a casino called Fire Rock Casino. And like a lot of casinos, they allow truck parking. So if you park there, and then if you walk, it's probably a good 1.5 2-mile walk east from there. There's a park called Red Rock Park, and it is like truly, genuinely hiking. Like you're hiking up this canyon, and there's some really great views and rock formations. And once you get to the top, you got a view down the canyon, and it's really quiet and just beautiful. Probably the most like serious hiking that I've been able to do, just putting my boots on in my truck and walking out the door.
Wow, that sounds awesome. And really, as far as convenience is concerned, it seems like you're not too far if you find a place to park the truck, at a truck stop or wherever it may be. You said, what, 1.5 walk to get to these little parks? That's nothing.
Yeah, exactly. And then you do your walking around while you're there, and then you come back. And so, yeah, it's a big advantage. If I'm in an urban area, of course, I'll do some walking, but Uber can be helpful. Yeah. But if you get yourself where you're, used to walking a number of miles, then there's a lot of places you can get yourself just from the truck stop if you're willing to walk a couple of miles, which it sounds like Matthew does as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, real quick, Matt, before I go back to Matthew here, you sent me a badass picture of you standing like a titan on top of a mountain in southern Utah here recently. It's a really cool picture, beautiful sky, and then the landscape just kind of pours out beneath you. What was your trip to southern Utah like, man? It looked like you had a pretty good time out there.
Yeah, that was awesome. That was a vacation and not something I did just on my reset, but
right.
Paid for with trucking money. So, there's that. And so that particular picture was taken at Bryce Canyon, which is my favorite. We went to, my girlfriend and I went out there, and we went to 5 different national parks and 2 state parks, and all of them beautiful. But my favorite is definitely Bryce, which is where that picture is from. Just gorgeous, but so different. We went to Zion, Capitol Reef, Arches, and then the Golden Spike National Monument. I guess that's a national monument, not a park.
Wow, that sounds like one heck of a trip, man. And the scenery you got to see out there. I mean, just some of God's country out there, I think is the way to put it. That's what they call those really big open spaces like that. That's God's country, right?
There you go. Yeah, we both, she flew in from Chicago, I flew from Omaha. We met up in Salt Lake City, rented a car, and then just drove. And the beautiful thing about out there is, like you're saying, just even the drive is beautiful, let alone when you get, into the particular national or state park.
Sure. Well, I appreciate you sharing that with me. And to any of you drivers that have my phone number, a lot of you guys text me on the regular. Man, if you go out on trips like this, if you take a vacation or maybe you find someplace cool on your 34, send it along to me because I'm always happy to share that type of stuff or talk about it on the podcast here as we are today. Matthew, I want to go back to you. Now, you said that you don't necessarily enjoy being in the big cities when you're ready to take your reset, but you did also say that you like to, when you take your reset, it's time to go out and find some good food, and it sounds to me like you're a real pizza guy. We already heard about Rosa's Pizza, but where's the other best pizza at? Like, when I think pizza, I think New York City. So is there any place over on that side of the country where you found good pizza, or are you kind of a West Coast pizza guy?
I'm a West Coast everything guy. However, there is a place, man, just put me on the spot. I can't remember, somewhere in Indiana, or no, it was in Ohio. But I'm always bugging my dispatcher. I love it in the mountains. I love going out west, and I love hearing about that one that Matt just talked about in New Mexico, because I can't count the number of times coming back from California and my clock's running out around Gallup area, and I don't really like staying at Gallup, but there's not much past Gallup, and I didn't know about that casino with the Red Rock Trail. I'll definitely be keeping that in mind next time I'm coming back after a California run.
There you go. And if you got an extra 100 burning a hole in your pocket, you can go give that to the casino too. I mean, look at that. It's like 2 birds, 1 stone.
I've learned my lesson there. So.
Haven't we all, man? Haven't we all? Well, Matt, you did mention a couple. You said that there are some cities that you like to stop into. What ones come to mind when I'm asking you about what cities you like to be in when you're taking your 34?
Yeah, a couple come to mind, and I would encourage you, Matthew, like, I know what you mean about rest. What I've found is when I go into a city, I'll often find a museum or an art museum, and walk around there and then go get some food or find a brewery or something. And I find that very relaxing, even though you're in a city. The museum, the art museum is chill, and just find chill places to hang out. But some of my favorites, Flagstaff is awesome. There's also some good hiking around there. I've been able to do a reset outside of San Antonio, Texas, which was great. I took an Uber in and walked all up and down the river walk a whole bunch of times and heard some live music and got some good food and all of that. So that's been a lot of fun. I managed to do a reset in New Orleans once, so that was, of course, a whole lot of fun. But then one of the things, I guess one of the challenges that I like is when I end up in some random city, just finding something interesting in that particular city. And there's usually something. And like the app's TripAdvisor is really helpful. There's another one called Atlas Obscura that gives like random weird things that you can go see. And so this, just a quick example, this past weekend, I ended up in Davenport, Iowa, probably not at the top of a lot of people's vacation list.
Oh, what are you talking about? That's a bucket list place for me, man. I got to get to Davenport.
Bury me in Davenport. But yeah, looking at that Atlas Obscura app, I found there was a small museum dedicated to Bix Beiderbecke, which you may not know who that is, but he was an early jazz musician, a trumpeter in the 20s. Like he and Louis Armstrong were like the 2 jazz trumpeters of the 1920s, and he was from Davenport. So there's a little museum dedicated to him there. So I checked that out, and then I found a couple of breweries in town, got some good food, got a little flight of beer, and just walked along the river there and had a good old time in Davenport, Iowa.
That sounds like a hell of a 34, man, even if you were in Davenport. I mean, Davenport is for lovers. That's what I hear. So that's awesome. And Matthew, when you hear Matt talk about kind of his philosophy on if he is in a concrete jungle, finding something to do, does that give you any ideas, anything that you might want to try? Are you a museum guy or anything like that?
Oh, definitely. I'm waiting for my next restart down by Houston somewhere because I'd love to go to the NASA down there.
Oh yeah.
Not sure if it's a museum or what, but I have a friend that lives in Houston. So next time I go down there, I'm going to call him up and I won't have to get an Uber. We'll go to that museum. But if I go to a big city, usually I'm in recovery. I've been going to like this 12-step meeting. I'll have 7 years clean next month.
Oh, congratulations! That's awesome.
I go to a lot of. I used to go to a lot more, but I need to get back into it. But I go to meetings on the road, and I always enjoy doing that. Sometimes you never know when you pop in and they're having some event, a barbecue or something like that, a fish fry. You always meet people there, and if something's going on that that they think I should be, I want to know about, I can hear it there.
Sure.
So
that's cool. I will say this. My wife is a recovering alcoholic, and in recovery, she's over 2 years sober right now, and I will tell you that the recovery community is an amazing thing. It doesn't matter what avenue you take, whether you're AA or 12-step or Refuge or any of these different programs. She has found some amazing support communities within these programs, and she's thriving right now, man. I got to tell you, and I can't tell you how happy I am to hear that you're 7 years out of it and still doing well and still finding a meeting every now and then. That's really cool, Matthew.
Oh yeah, congratulations to her. It's a it's a big thing. And that's exactly it. Anywhere, any city in this country I've been to at a meeting, I walk in and just feel at home. Everybody's always welcoming, and it's like a family away from your family.
That's really cool. Well, maybe someday out in the future we can do a podcast episode, because I know you're not the only liquid driver that is actively in his recovery, and so maybe someday we can do an episode where we can talk about that a little bit and get the word out to anybody else that might need a little bit of support there, because as you said, it's a super supportive community, and I just think it's so cool when people finally make that decision and get themselves out of the rut, man. So again, congratulations on 7 years, and keep going strong out there.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Liquid Trucking, thank you so much for all of the fantastic content that you have brought to this podcast over the last year. It's been a lot of fun. I can't thank my lucky stars enough for being your podcast host. It's been a phenomenal company to work with. You know, your drivers are so good about getting on the show here, talking to me about all things under the sun. And management as well has just been phenomenal for us all year. So we really want to thank you from the bottom of our heart and wish you a happy 2025. Here's to new beginnings, fresh starts. Here's to those diets we're all going to quit within a week. Unless you're Mike Stanfield, by the way. Shout out to that guy. He's looking great. I've seen the pictures. I know the weight's melting off, dude. Hey, this is such a cool thing for us that we all get to do, and we couldn't do it without all of you. I think that's the message here in this final bit of our end-of-the-year wrap-up segment. Don't forget to go check out the podcast website. If you head over to liquidtrucking.com, it's right there at the top of the page. Click the button right next to my face, and you will find a landing spot for all things podcast. You can get a hold of me there as well, or email me, podcast@liquidtrucking.com. I want all of you to have a very safe and happy New Year celebration. Thanks for being a part of the Liquid Trucking Podcast. We'll see you next week. Keep the shiny side up and stay safe out there, drivers. We'll see you soon.
Thanks for tuning in and being the gold standard of drivers on the road. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and tune in next week for another episode of the Liquid Trucking Podcast.